Well, good morning, everyone. I want to thank Mike Colonna and his staff at one of my favorite restaurants in an LA institution, Norms, for hosting us today. And those of us who have been following the news out of COP26, the Glasgow Climate Summit, know that not much of substance has been accomplished, yet again. We've known for years that cities have to lead on climate issues, and in the City of Angels, we are. Thanks to strong leadership from my friend and colleague, Councilmember Paul Krekorian, as well as Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell, who heads up our Environmental Committee, but unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. Thanks to Mayor Garcetti's own international efforts as chair of the C40 cities and co-founder of the Climate Mayors. Thanks to ongoing and important projects like the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office in our Public Works Department, headed up by Public Works Commission President Greg Good, and so many in our Sanitation Department, headed up by its General Manager, Barbara Romero. And thanks to our terrific advocacy community, represented today by Five Geyers and Break Free from Plastic, and others with us from the Reusable LA Coalition, who ensure that we keep pushing forward and support us to keep going further. Los Angeles is blazing a trail into a zero carbon, zero waste future. We're working hard to electrify and decarbonize our electric grid and transportation sector. We're working to redefine and improve our purchasing and contracting standards. We're working to better protect our biological resources in and around the city, and we're working to better prepare for the climate-exacerbated impacts that are already here and only going to get worse, including our mega drought, our fires, and our extreme heat events. And pertinent to why we're here today, we're working to change our bad habits, which are piling up in so many harmful ways. And here's just a little stuff from my junk drawer. And this is only for a few months. I cleaned it out the last time we did a press conference on this subject. Today is America Recycles Day, which is a little bit ironic. So you see all this stuff. This is what I call zero-use plastics, worse than single-use plastics, because for the last year and 3 quarters during COVID, many of us have been ordering takeout and eating mainly at home, which means these utensils they send us never get used because we don't need them. It goes into a drawer or straight into the trash and from there into a landfill. They're not recyclable. There's nothing for us to do with them. And it's the very definition of waste. And today I'm happy to say it's finally going to stop. Today, the ordinance Councilmember Krekorian and I introduced in January and the City Council approved goes into force for large restaurants like Norms, restaurants with more than 26 employees, and for our food delivery services like Grubhub and DoorDash. It'll go into effect with the smaller establishments in 6 months on Earth Day 2022. Today's Foodware Upon Request ordinance is a common sense measure intended to save restaurants money by reducing the amount of stuff that comes home with our food deliveries or pickups, including utensils, napkins, condiments, straws, chopsticks, and the like. This doesn't include anything that's part of the recipe like salad dressing. Consumers have to click the box or ask if they want this kind of stuff. If they don't click the box, they don't get the stuff. It's easy, it's basic, and it's a win-win for everybody. Before I finish, I just want to say some other thank yous to our colleague, Councilmember Bob Blumenfield, who had an earlier related effort, to our hardworking sanitation staff, Alex Halu and Jennifer Pinkerton, to our city attorney staff, Adina Hopenstand and Steve Martin, and our CLA, Rafael Prieto, and to our council staffers who have worked so hard on this. Andy Schrader from my office and Aaron Ordauer from CD2. And especially thank you to all the advocates with the Reusable LA Coalition who all worked so hard to make this happen. Excellent work, everybody. Next up is my friend, chair of the council's powerful budget committee, an environmental champion in his own right and on so many important issues, representing the 2nd District of Los Angeles, Paul Krekorian.
Leave him there.
I was going to say,
I'll be using him.
all right. I was going to say I should dump him with the rest, but
Thanks.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Paul Koretz. Thank you for recognizing everyone that has been involved in this really important effort that got us to this point today. But I want to give special recognition to one person that Paul didn't mention sufficiently, and that's Paul Koretz, because there is no one in Southern California who has been a greater champion on the issue of climate change than Paul Koretz. He has been the voice of our collective conscience on climate change in the City Council. He has been relentless in reminding us of the impacts on climate change in so many areas of our commerce, what we do in government, what we do as consumers. He's been the one who has always reminded us of the impacts of climate change. And in so many other areas of environmental protection, Paul Koretz has been the great champion of Los Angeles. And so, Paul, it's an honor to stand with you today and to work with you on this project. And you know, Paul talks about climate change all the time. And on a day like today, in November, when it's almost Thanksgiving, and I'm wondering how long I can keep my coat on, we're reminded again of the impacts of climate change. And if you had taken the opportunity of this beautiful weather to go to the beach this weekend in November, in a matter of an hour of looking around at the beach, you could have found stuff like this everywhere you went. Every beach in California is littered with stuff like this. Everywhere you go, you see stuff like this. Why? Because anything that ends up on this parking lot, anything that ends up on Ventura Boulevard in that gutter is going to find its way to the ocean. Everything. Your cigarette butt, your ketchup container, these chopsticks, this plasticware. If it goes onto pavement, it's going to find its way into the ocean. And folks, since Los Angeles began, we have depended upon that ocean for our livelihood, for our existence as a city. And now that ocean is depending upon each and every one of us. So the first reason that this matters so much is because all of this waste is going to find its way to the ocean that is already choked around the world with plastic refuse, plastic waste, plastic trash that's in our ocean. So much so that by the year 2050, there will be more plastics in the ocean by weight than there will be fish. So at some point as a society, we have to come to grips with that catastrophic result of our demand for convenience. So that's one thing. Now, people say, whoa, yeah, but I'm an environmentalist. We saw somebody who just stopped by a moment and tossed their plastic bottles into this bin. I'm an environmentalist. I make sure I recycle my stuff. Nonsense. Almost no plastic, and especially not this plastic, is ever recycled. In the history of plastic, we've only recycled less than 10% of all of the plastic ever made in history. So if you think that you're doing the right thing by tossing your forks in the recycling bin, I've got news for you. You are not absolved of your responsibility, because that is not going to be recycled. It's going to be thrown in the trash. If we're lucky, it's going to get into a landfill. So recycling doesn't get us out of this. The other challenge here is not just the ocean, but our neighborhoods. When we live in this disposable society, of use and toss, or as Paul says, don't use and toss, just toss it before it's even used, every neighborhood in Los Angeles is damaged by the kind of litter that we see, the blighting effect that we see on our sidewalks, in our streets, on next to every freeway on-ramp, every place, when we see this stuff destroying the quality of life in our neighborhood, making this city uglier. So the third reason that we want to get rid of this is because as almost none of this is used, but it's still being manufactured, and Norm's restaurant and every other restaurant has to have these things, right, for the delivery services and so on. So that means we're manufacturing all of this plastic, and plastic is the last refuge of the fossil fuel industry. As the rest of us are saying no to fossil fuels, as we're saying yes to electric transportation, yes to the electrification of the DWP, getting rid of fossil fuels in the DWP, yes to the electrification of our built environment. As we're moving towards a more sustainable energy future that doesn't include fossil fuels, the fossil fuel industry is cramming this stuff down our throats because that's what's keeping them in business, plastics. So the more we can get rid of this, the better off we are in terms of the impact of the fossil fuel industry. And then last, but certainly not least, we're in a time right now in Los Angeles where we have to do everything we can to make sure that businesses thrive and succeed and are able to hire people and create good jobs. And many people still believe in this sort of false narrative that environmental protection is somehow contrary to business interests. Nonsense. In this case, the businesses that have to pay for all of this stuff, this is lost profits. Right here in my hands, this is lost profits for businesses that are paying for these things only to have it thrown out immediately. So if we can change the way people think to an on-demand model so that the only forks that are being handed out are to people who need them and ask for them, that's going to save every restaurant in Los Angeles thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. There was a study that was done that's just as one example. The Market Cafe, San Francisco favorite, the Market Cafe saved $150,000 a year by eliminating their no-use foodware items. No additional labor costs, no additional anything. They just stopped buying as much of this stuff and saved $150,000. When the Cutlery campaign launched in October of 2019 and food delivery apps started to take on this cause, that just since then, since October of 2019, there's been a savings of $3.2 million for our restaurants. So this is an opportunity to not only save our environment, not only save the quality of life in our neighborhoods, but also to save Los Angeles jobs and keep our businesses thriving. And that's what this is about. And so I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of it. And I want to thank Mr. Koretz again for his leadership, and to everyone standing behind me here for their vision, for their leadership, for their collaboration in bringing us to this very important day. Thanks very much.
And just to make an extra point, a lot of restaurants, even when we ask them, please don't put any utensils. I mean, I have a nice set of chopsticks at home, and this is just from a few months of unwanted chopsticks when every single time I've asked restaurants, please don't give it to me. So now there won't be that mistake any longer. Next up, Mayor Garcetti's Director of Infrastructure, Energy, Water, and Waste, who's pushing forward in partnership with us in so many of those areas, Rebecca Rasmussen.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for hosting us and for the introduction, and for your and Councilmember Krekorian's leadership on moving Los Angeles towards zero waste and weaning the city off single-use plastics. Thank you also to LA Sanitation and Environment for being our steadfast implementers of these policies and our idea engines for how to tackle the unique challenges of waste. I also want to recognize the work of Five Gyres, Break Free from Plastic, and the entire membership of the Reusable LA Coalition for pushing for change at the local, state, and federal level to reduce single-use plastic use and waste. Changing behavior is a daunting task, and it is encouraging to see such a broad and diverse coalition coming together on this. And most importantly, norms. Thank you for hosting us and for being on the front lines of a single-use issue such as this. I recognize we have asked a lot of restaurants, owners, and workers this past year and a half, and I want to say thank you for all you've done. I'm here in place of Mayor Garcetti, who is in Washington, D.C., witnessing the signing of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which will put $1.2 trillion towards, among many, many other things, new grants for recycling education and post-consumer material management, which includes municipal recycling programs. While I appreciate the invite in his place, I do feel a bit out of place as a director of infrastructure speaking to an issue we admittedly could not build or innovate our way out of. Approximately 40 billion plastic utensils are disposed of every year in the United States, most without being used, as discussed. Even when made from resin that could be remolded into something new, our sorting infrastructure isn't made to identify, sort, or bundle things this small. Just one of the many issues of the current recycling system. In 2018 alone, 18% of all municipal solid waste that was landfilled in the US was plastic. That's 27 million tons of plastic a year, or 74,000 tons a day. It will take a variety of policies and programs to truly tackle plastic pollution, and today we start with a shift towards source reduction and a culture of reuse. From 2019 to 2020, digital orders increased roughly 127%, and consumption of single-use plastic, at least the handout of it, increased by almost 300% since the pandemic began. By creating an opt-in option only for customers, one delivery company saved an estimated 122 million packets of cutlery in 1 year. These small changes to our consumer system add up to big changes in our waste collection and diversion capabilities, and can equal cost savings for restaurants no longer needing to stock items barely used. This is one step down the long road towards less waste. This year, the mayor put $2.75 million in a zero waste programs in his justice budget, with $1 million specifically coming to support restaurants looking to make the switch to reusable items for in-house dining and move to compostable foodware for takeout. We look forward to rolling that out in the coming months and to help move the needle for restaurants and food vendors interested in reducing their waste footprint, but unsure how to proceed or unable to front the initial costs. Making foodware on request and providing support to transition to reusable foodware are short-term policies that will enable us to achieve waste self-sufficiency in the long term. The mayor set forward in a sustainable city plan a target diversion rate of 90% by 2025 and 100% zero waste by 2050. Taking a hard look at the materials we bring into our city for sale and use is a necessary step towards meeting these goals. We will not recycle our way out of our current plastic pollution problem. We instead need to change our behavior and our tolerance levels for waste. Thank you.
Next from LA Sanitation, our Assistant Director of Solid Waste Resources, who is key to so many of our environmental successes, Alex Halu.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Councilmember Koretz, and thank you, Councilmember Krekorian, for your environmental stewardship. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning in support of the Foodware Accessories on Demand. Sanitation mission is simple, is to protect the public health and environment. Public utensils and condiment wrappers, these are items that end up in landfill or in the ocean, often without even being used once. The best way to address this waste is to stop it before it even starts. LA San is supporting the implementation of this ordinance through public education and outreach. Our staff have provided educational resources to industry leaders, hosted presentations, and we send out direct mailers to businesses impacted in the city of Los Angeles. We will continue to reach out and inform businesses as this ordinance implemented. Enforcement of this ordinance is a question we always ask. Will be mainly driven by consumer reporting. Customers can call our customer care center, 1-800-773-2489, and they can report. This is our partnership that will keep Los Angeles free from this type of plastic pollution. As we move forward towards a zero waste city, it will take these types of policies from council, partnership between us, government agencies, businesses, and environmental groups, and everyday Angelenos in order to be successful in protecting our environment for future generations to come. I want to take a quick second and thank Andy Schrader, Erin Ordowar, Jennifer Pinkerton, and James Malden for helping us through this. And finally, congratulations to Norm as well on 72 years in business here in Southern California. This is an incredible achievement. Thank you.
Next up, someone who's been an integral part of the reason we all know about the enormous gyres of swirling plastic in the ocean, the co-founder and executive director of Five Gyres, Anna Cummins.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for the introduction. On behalf of our whole team at Five Gyres, as well as all the members of the Reusable LA Coalition, it's an honor to be here today to support what was truly a collaborative effort to pass the Food Wares Accessories upon request, as well as to take this important step towards eliminating the threat of plastic pollution and climate change from the city of Los Angeles. Our organization, Five Gyres, which utilizes first-hand vetted science to drive upstream solutions to plastic pollution, has been a key member of the Reusable LA Coalition since its inception. Our members came together united around a common vision to see our beloved city of Los Angeles reduce its dependence on fossil fuel-based plastic pollution and to embrace a new age of reuse. We began building stronger momentum several years ago, working with local electeds, environmental justice partners, and activists to bring this vision to light. But then COVID-19 brought these efforts to a halt. Early in the pandemic, we witnessed the plastics industry taking unfair advantage of a global crisis to spread misinformation about the safety of reusables, undermining decades of work to reduce plastic pollution. And these plastics began to pile up, putting additional health pressures on marginalized communities where fossil fuels to make plastics are extracted and where waste plastics are incinerated. And as a mother, I know full well the health implications of this incineration as well as the toxic chemicals in plastic, having done a body burden before the birth of my daughter and finding trace levels of toxic chemicals, PCBs, DDT, flame retardants, and other chemicals in my own body, chemicals that I know we pass to the next generation. We also witnessed the toll that the pandemic took on one of our city's most important industries, our restaurant sector, which literally gives our city its unique flavor. And so when the opportunity arose for a Food Wares Accessories upon request ordinance to both support restaurants and pave the way towards future efforts to reduce single-use plastics, Reusable LA and our local policymakers quickly rallied. And I would be remiss here if I didn't mention the incredible leadership of the organization Habits of Waste, Sheila Moravati, who really brought this idea to all of our consciousness. The resulting policy is a common sense approach to save restaurants much needed resources and to prevent our communities from the buildup of toxic waste plastics. But that isn't all. As everyone here knows, what we do here in Los Angeles can set the model for statewide policy in California, as we see with the passage of AB 1276, as well as for the rest of the country. What we do here in Los Angeles matters. So as we celebrate this important milestone, we are keeping our sights set on the way forward to eliminate the larger public health and climate crisis of disposable plastics here in Los Angeles and usher in the age of reuse and regeneration. Our sincere gratitude to Council Members Krekorian and Koretz and Mayor Garcetti for their leadership on this critical issue. Let's keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And as you noted, LA is one of the most watched cities in the world. So our intention is not just to solve our own plastic pollution problem. It's to have other cities throughout the country and even throughout the world watch what we've done and emulate it. And if we are successful in doing that, we will actually eliminate hundreds of millions, if not billions, of pounds of wasted plastic and other resources, and can make a huge difference in the fight towards climate change and the fights toward protecting our resources. Next up, one of the leaders of the fantastic Reusable LA Coalition, who really helped us make this happen, the U.S. coordinator of Break Free from Plastic, Melissa Arguello.
Good morning to all. My name is Melissa Arguello, and I'm the U.S. Regional Coordinator for Break Free from Plastic and the co-chair of the Reusable LA Coalition, a coalition made up of over 25 organizations working to reduce plastic pollution and to bring thriving culture of reuse and refill to Los Angeles. Listen, I'm not just an environmentalist and an activist. I'm a mom of two. I get it. We often need the convenience of takeout, but we usually don't need all of those throwaway items, those single-use items, which we sometimes even call no-use items because they don't even get used at all. As Alex said, the best way to stop these from becoming a problem is to prevent them from being made in the first place. This ordinance is a small change that leads to big savings for restaurants and for our planet. Because here's the thing, all of those throwaway accessories add up. We use 36 billion disposable utensils every year in the US alone. That's just utensils. And they come at a big, big cost. As folks have already said, plastic breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces, never fully breaking down. And more than 99% of plastic is made from fossil fuels, which pollutes throughout its entire life cycle, contributing to our climate emergency, from extraction to disposal, impacting communities of color and low-income communities who are being disproportionately impacted by this. This ordinance highlights the kinds of solutions we are excited to see our city champion, solutions that dispel the myth that we have to pick between environment and economy. That's just not true. And this ordinance proves that. On behalf of the coalition, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to Council members Krekorian and Koretz, the full City Council, and the hundreds of Angelenos, including restaurants, who called or wrote in to support the accessories upon request ordinance, or skip the stuff, as we also like to call it. We are so excited to see this ordinance come into effect to support our local restaurants when they need it the most. And we look forward to seeing more solutions like this, like reuse and refill, which provide wins for restaurants and businesses. Our partners at Rethink Disposable can show you case study after case study showing cost savings, reducing the toxic impacts of those single-use plastics, lessening that waste stream. And it's a win for our strained waste management systems, it's a win for our oceans, and it's a win for our beloved city. These are the kinds of common sense solutions that bring us closer to breaking free from plastic in a way that works for all Angelenos. And if it's okay, I'd like to read my comments in Spanish as well. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Melissa Arguello y soy la coordinadora regional de los Estados Unidos para Break Free from Plastic, liberándose del plástico, y co-chair de la coalición Reusable LA, una coalición formada por más de 25 organizaciones que trabajan para reducir la contaminación plástica en Los Ángeles. No solo soy una activista, también soy mamá de 2 hijas y alguien que le encanta la comida. Y entiendo, a veces uno ocupa la comida para llevar, es fácil, pero a menudo no necesitamos esos artículos desechables adicionales que usamos por minutos o tal vez no los usamos. Y esos artículos crean un gran problema. Hay un creciente problema de basura que está terminando en el vertedero o en nuestras comunidades y nuestras playas. Esta ordenanza es un pequeño cambio que genera grandes ahorros para los restaurantes y para nuestro planeta. Porque aquí está la cuestión. Todos estos accesorios desechables se suman. Usamos 36,000 millones de utensilios desechables cada año en solo los Estados Unidos y tienen un gran costo. La mayoría de esos artículos desechables están hechos de plástico. El plástico que se rompe en pedazos más pequeños y más pequeños, pero nunca se va completamente y que impacta a comunidades de color, a comunidades de menos recursos, en todas partes del ciclo de vida de plástico, ya sea cuando se está sacando, cuando está en la extracción hasta la eliminación. Esta ordenanza destaca el tipo de soluciones que nos entusiasma ver a nuestra ciudad campeonar. Soluciones que disipen el mito de que tenemos que elegir entre el medio ambiente y la economía. En nombre de la coalición, nos gustaría expresar nuestro agradecimiento a los concejales Krekorian y Koretz, al concejal municipal en pleno y a los cientos de angelinos, incluyendo restaurantes locales, que llamaron o escribieron para apoyar la ordenanza. Estamos muy emocionados a ver esta ordenanza en vigencia para apoyar a nuestros restaurantes locales cuando más lo necesitan y esperamos ver más soluciones como estas que reusan y reutilizan para brindar los beneficios a nuestra ciudad, a nuestras playas, a nuestras comunidades and beyond. Estos son los tipos de soluciones de sentido común que nos acercan a liberarnos del plástico de una manera que funciona para todos los angelinos. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
I could have tried that. Hola. That's about as far as I go, sorry. Next, I'd like to invite up our host today, the president of Norm's Restaurant, Mike Colonna.
Good afternoon. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for your patience. It's a little warm today. We do have some ice water in the proper containers for everyone a little later on. And I'm glad to see that there is not a Norm's pack in here, although I know Councilmember Koretz is a great visitor of Norm's. Councilmember Krekorian, I also want to appreciate you coming out today and your involvement. The city and state agencies, the mayor's office, and a special shout out to Allison, who's been great in terms of helping us coordinate this so that we could host what we think is an important initiative. I've been in the restaurant business for a long time. Started off with one of the big three fast food restaurants, and you can take your pick which one that was, because there were only three. And that's when delivery and drive-through was really monumental in terms of the changing of the industry. So today we have QSRs, we have convenience stores, we have fast casual, we have dining rooms like us. And the battle has always been to help train an individual or a team member from putting that handful of ketchup in the bag that never gets used. So when Allison called me up and we discussed this, I was actually very enthused to be a part of this, because if there's an initiative that can be a win for the environment, a win for the company, for the business, and also we can manage hospitality with the guest, it's a trifecta. So I think that's great. So here behind me, I have Krista from our training team, I have Nate from our marketing team, and I have Misty from our operations team, because we're just starting to learn on how to make this better. We've done it a little bit because of COVID and because of not usable product that once it goes out, but operations, marketing, and training will be involved. And I think that's part of it on how do we influence, number one, our team members, and number two, the guest, because behavior modification takes time, and we're gonna have to go through that. We have 3 restaurants in the city here, Encino, La Cienega, and in Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks, very different client bases. And so we'll adjust how we approach this problem, not problem, the solution, I should say. That was a misspeak. And we'll do the best we can. And I think all restaurateurs should be in support of this. It's just common sense. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you for showing how restaurants can cooperate and help us, help them save money and help us save resources that we desperately need. Now we have our terrific LA Sanitation here with us, also to help answer any questions about the ordinance, and we're happy to take any questions that any of you might have.
Yeah, 2-part question. One, just to clarify on the ordinance, pardon me for just wanting to get a little background on it. So basically, restaurants now will be able to distribute plastic forks, chopsticks, napkins, things like that, unless requested by the customer?
Yes, so if it's done online, they'll have to check a box actually asking for it, because we get all this crap and we don't want it and we don't need it. And you might ask for a cheeseburger to be delivered and find there's 15 packets of ketchup, none of which you want to use, and they just get thrown out. Or forks and knives made of plastic when you're at home and you have your own permanent forks and knives. Don't need any of that stuff. So starting now, you won't be just getting it, you will have to ask for it. And this will save so many tons of waste, it's almost unimaginable.
So what about for somebody calling in to place a to-go order? What will that look like?
You'll again have to ask. They can ask if you want it, but they can't just put it in. So that's certainly happened too. I've done pickups and to-go orders, and I get home and I find all this junk is in there that I absolutely don't need. So this will put a halt to all that waste.
Have there been any studies done on how much plastic is typically keep from getting out into the local environment?
Maybe sanitation will want to answer that and probably have statistics.
No one really actually tracks as closely, but as you heard previous speakers refer to the fact it could be hundreds of millions. We honestly don't know, but we do know most of it's not used and most of it is never recycled. So just consider how much you've got in your junk drawer at home and extrapolate from there.
Some of these packets
Yes.
include like soy sauce, salt, and pepper.
Yes.
Can you just talk about what the plan is for those?
Okay.
And a restaurant, sometimes the box, when you check it, it doesn't say. It just comes with salt and pepper. So how does that play?
Okay, the online ordering services have to list all the foodware accessories that they typically order, and they will probably vary as how they set that up, but you have to opt in. If you're at a drive-through, the restaurant can prompt you and remind you, ask you if you want that. But if you're in the restaurant, dine in, or you're picking up your to-go order, you have to request those items. And this tilt truck is a good example. For the past 2 months, sanitation sponsored a donation drive collecting unused condiment and utensil packets, which we're going to donate to homeless shelters. And you'll see some packets. It really varies by the restaurant. Some will give you a packet that has just one utensil and a napkin. Other packets have various condiments in there depending on what you order, so it would be ketchup. The one exception to this is, let's say you order a Chinese chicken salad that has a special dressing for that salad. You do not have to request that because it's considered integral to that meal. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add one thing to that. The point of this is changing behavior. And so Los Angeles, being the second largest city in the nation, when we establish a policy like this, others follow. And then industry follows as more governments take this on. And consumers change the way they think about this. That's the point of this. It's not about the technicality of enforcement or so on. We hope this will never be enforced, because we hope that it'll change the way consumers think about things, in the same way, for example, that plastic bag bans have started to change the way people think about when they go to the grocery store. They have to bring in their non-single-use grocery device. It's about changing behavior. And on the mechanics of it, today marks the day when this ordinance becomes effective for large restaurants. This gives an opportunity for the public to start to become aware of this, and for the small business community to start to become aware of this as well, because as much outreach as we've done, over 30,000 mailers out to businesses, there will still be mom and pop businesses that are not aware of this yet. So the launch is with larger businesses. The effective date of the ordinance for smaller businesses will come later.
Is there a punishment for businesses that don't comply?
Well, I'm expecting that will be an irrelevant question. I don't think we're going to see a lot of punishment of businesses that insist on costing themselves money to break the law and give people lots of junk that they really don't need. I mean, nobody needs all this ketchup and soy sauce. I mean, I cleaned out my my condiment drawer a couple months ago, and yet here's all this junk again. And soy sauce and chopsticks, and we just don't need this much stuff in our own one drawer at home. I mean, and ultimately at some point you just have to throw it out because you may be saving it, but it's never going to be used. So I think really we're not expecting to see a single person get fined. We're just pushing hard to make sure every restaurant knows the issue, understands the issue, and how to implement it, and they're ready to save thousands of dollars a year and help us save hundreds and thousands of tons of this junk.
So you heard Mike's description of how this is beneficial to the restaurant industry, and I think most restaurants are going to see that as well. I doubt that there will be many who will just be obstinate about refusing to comply. But this, again, the point of the ordinance is not gotcha. It's not to catch businesses and impose fines on them. In fact, before there's any enforcement at all, any given business will have two warnings before the first fine would take place, and the first fine would be $25. And it's a maximum of just a few hundred per year, 300 per year. So this is not about enforcement. It's about behavior changes. And I think it'll be effective in the same way that the straw ordinance has been effective.
And if you look at an issue that was more controversial a few decades ago, which was smoking in restaurants, the big concern was, how are you going to enforce it? Well, we really never had to do much enforcement. Everybody wanted a smokeless environment. So if somebody was smoking, your neighbor in the next booth would tell you to stop. And we've never really had to do much enforcement in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, any of the cities that did this early before it became a statewide requirement. I think we expect the same here. I'd be surprised if we wind up having to give out a single fine to a single restaurateur. I think this will be well accepted, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Anything else?
Copies of the ordinance and frequently asked questions for any of the freshmen?
Yes, Ali Samard on my staff has copies of the ordinance and some frequently asked questions if that'll help you. So thank you everybody for joining us.